Alright guys, so today I thought I'd go back to my roots on the channel a bit and make a video on an old-time fighter. So if you see the first 3 videos on my channel, they're all on old-time fighters, so I thought I might make a video on one of them since I've made a video on a lot of modern boxers recently. So when you think about hype jobs in modern boxing, you think about Terence Crawford, Gervonta Davis, Canelo, Anthony Joshua, but none of these guys are on the level of hype job that Jack Johnson was. So let's get straight into this. So all-time great. When I talk about an all-time great, there are 3 criteria that I'm looking for. I'm looking for resume. You have to have a pretty stacked resume to be considered an all-time great. You have to prove that you're the best in the division at the time. And you've got to be a good fighter, you know. There's no point of ranking, say, Adrian Broner as an all-time great because he's just not good enough, despite accomplishing a lot in the sport. So, firstly, resume. Jack Johnson ducked so many top contenders, it is unreal. So the list, let's go through them. So he ducked Sam McVeigh. He fought Sam McVeigh when McVeigh was in his 5th fight, and Jack Johnson was a seasoned pro at that point. And of course he won the fight. I mean, McVeigh was pretty much a novice, while Johnson was a seasoned pro. So, obviously he wanted nothing to do with McVeigh in his prime, when Johnson was at his prime and the world champion. So there's one. Number 2, Joe Jeanette. Very similar situation to Sam McVeigh, to be honest. When Johnson fought Jeanette, he was winning some fights, losing some fights. He had a very 50-50 record. He won some, he lost some. So obviously Johnson beat him at that stage of his career. But once again, as soon as he got into his prime, Johnson wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. Number 3, Sam Langford. So Sam Langford, the former lightweight, 5'6", pretty small man for the heavyweight division. Johnson wanted nothing to do with him, of course. He ducked him while he was champion. Surprise, surprise. Another one was Gunboat Smith. Now, there were rumours that Gunboat Smith actually TKO'd Jack Johnson in sparring. He dropped him and Johnson's manager called it off. So, I'm not surprised he didn't want the fight after that. And yeah, that's another one. So there's 4 top contenders he's ducked right there. His excuse for ducking the black guys was the white crowd of boxing wanted a so-called Great White Hope to take over the heavyweight division. And yeah, so there was a white champion on top of the heavyweight division. But that doesn't tell the whole story, does it? Jack Johnson said there was no money in fighting those guys, yet he fought a black journeyman as a title defence. Seems pretty hypocritical. And also, just by the way, the black journeyman he fought, battling Jim Johnson, he almost beat Jack Johnson. This guy, battling Jim Johnson, he had a record of 27 wins and 17 losses. And he held Jack Johnson to a draw, and one of the judges gave him the win. So, yeah, the less said about that, the better, probably. But yeah, Jack Johnson, a complete cherry picker, a complete ducker of anyone who was actually good. And it's not surprised that he fought bums as his title defences. Another part of his resume is that his best win is probably James Jeffries, the great heavyweight, who is an all-time great in his own right. But the problem is, this version of Jeffries he was a farmer at this point. He put on 100 pounds. He was a farmer who, after he bought his farm, he blew up in weight to, I think he was well over 300 pounds. And when Jack Johnson fought him, he'd been incentivized out of retirement for a ton of money back then. He had to lose £100 to get down to his fighting weight, so obviously he was weak. he was out the ring for 6 years, and obviously he was inactive for so long. He was a 35-year-old man as well, way past his best, and that's Jack Johnson's best win. So that says a lot. Prime Jeffries would have knocked Jack Johnson out as well, so it puts a bit of doubt on the whole win. So next, is Jack Johnson good enough to be an all-time great? Was he a good enough fighter? The answer is no. Jack Johnson's style. Just go and watch his win against Jeffries, for example. Every time Jeffries would get close, he would clinch. Like, if you thought guys like Jack Catterall or Tyson Fury or Vladimir Klitschko hold a lot, you haven't seen Jack Johnson. This guy clinched so much it looked like a wrestling match. And these weren't like 3-second clinches either. These were excruciatingly long clinches. So he used this tactic. Most of his opponents were much smaller than him. You know, they were pretty much middleweights. And yeah, he would lean on these guys, wear them down, and tire them out. That was pretty much his style. He would throw uppercuts in the clinch. And this guy was one of the dirtiest fighters. He was pretty much the 20th century equivalent of Andre Ward. I mean, this guy used every foul tactic in the book. So, that says a lot. He had a glass chin. He got knocked down by a middleweight. The only reason he didn't get knocked down more frequently is because he fought bums. So, yeah. And also, the next point, he never proved himself as the best. Obviously, because he ducked so many top contenders, he never fought the best, so he didn't prove himself as the best. And, like, the logic of boxing fans is a bit lost sometimes, because some people, for example, they say, oh, Tyson Fury's not an all-time great because he didn't prove himself as the best, despite going over to Germany to beat the most dominant heavyweight champion in the history of boxing in his backyard. And then he went over to beat another heavyweight champion in his backyard. But he never proved himself as the best. But Jack Johnson did, and he's an all-time great. It's just the logic of boxing fans, isn't it? So, I hope by this video you understand that Jack Johnson is a complete fraud hype job. He's one of the biggest bums in the history of boxing. And yeah, he's nowhere near an all-time great. So, thanks for watching, guys. And I'll see you in the next one. God bless.